And I don't know if I've ever been so naked and humiliated since then. I've bombed even worse. But the next night, I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it again.
Hi, I'm Raihan Salam. Today, Vice meets Jim Norton, comedian, one of the hosts of the Opie and Anthony Show, best-selling author, and host of the forthcoming Jim Norton Show. Jim, thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Jim, you're considered one of the most inventive and fearless comedians working right now. I don't want to embarrass you, but it's true.
Thank you.
But my understanding is that you encountered Richard Pryor at a very early age, and he's part of what brought you into the comedy game.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like being funny. It's like, you know, like, I know I'm a funny guy when I'm a kid, but what do I do with that? Like, you don't think there's a job for that. And then when I saw Pryor filmed live in concert, I'm like, oh, that's what you do with this feeling of like making people, like I never understood that there was a place to go with it. So he was the first person that showed me there was a place to go with that. So that kind of cemented what I wanted to do. I was 12, I think.
Tell me a little bit, though, about, you were a funny kid. What did that mean exactly?
I don't know what it is. If you say to me, what is somebody who's funny, I really don't know. It's like there's an emotion that comes out of people when they laugh.
Yeah.
And I don't know what makes a person funny. I have no idea. I can't describe it. I know I liked making girls laugh. That was the only thing that got them to notice me when I was a kid, because I had dandruff. I was like a little creep. And but when the girls would laugh. So that was the one thing I was like, oh, okay. And then the guys would laugh, and then the guys didn't kick my ass because I made them laugh.
Yeah.
So you kind of, I think it's like you overcompensate for not being able to do other things. And some people bully other people and beat the shit out of them. Other people are able to be funny. You know, we're all doing things to kind of survive. I mean, not dramatically like for our lives, but just, socially to survive. And for me, that was the thing I was good at. And so you just kind of work on that. And it was, I liked knowing that not everybody could do it. It's the first quality I've ever associated myself with being. And it's always sad to me, people, like this can be people who think I suck as a comic, or yeah, all right, fine. But there's people I know who just desperately want to be funny people, and they're just not funny people. And I'm not even saying that to shit on them. I just like, I want to hug them sometimes. Like, God, you're awful.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you are giving somebody something as a byproduct of it's really in a selfish attention grab.
Yeah.
And the byproduct is they're getting something out of it. But literally, if people would just pay to watch me for an hour, just talk, I would do that too. It's all about attention. I think Olivier said that about acting. It's notice me.
Yeah.
I love doing it. I love making people laugh. But it's like a powerful feeling when you're doing it, and you don't have that feeling at other times in the day. You know what I mean? You come off stage and you talk to people, and then you're right back into low self-esteem and like, ugh, I suck. But for that 1 hour, you're kind of controlling the emotions of people, and that's a great feeling.
Do you feel like everyone hungers for attention, but some people just get it naturally because, let's say, they're incredibly gorgeous or something like that, and they just get it naturally so they don't have to cultivate those other things? Or do you think that actually some people hunger for that kind of attention and recognition and other people don't?
Maybe both. I mean, I don't know if it's, like, I think good-looking people are a lot less likely to be funny because, like you said, they don't have to be. Like really classically beautiful women or classically handsome guys, they get invited to parties anyway.
Yeah.
They don't have to tap dance like assholes to get people to go, oh, all right, come on. They just get asked to go.
Yeah.
It's like that scene in Midnight Cowboy when the two people are walking around and they see John Voight and they go, him, and they give him this invite to a party and stupid Dustin Hoffman's just sitting there all greasy. That's what it is. Yeah, it's very true. I mean, that's why comedians, I think, have a long shelf life, because we don't have to be good looking. Like Rick Rickles is 80.
Yeah.
Joan Rivers is 80.
Still
and
killing
she's still
it.
brutal and great. Like these are still relevant people. They're still saying shit that makes the blogs and makes the news. Like, so you don't have to be good looking. When no one says, wow, Don Rickles put on weight, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Boy, Joan Rivers looks old. Well, she is old, and she'll tell you she's old.
That is so dead on. Well, so what I want to know is, okay, so you're 12 years old, you see Pryor, and you're like, wow, this is a thing. He's a guy, he has this thing, he's doing this thing, it's getting the attention, but he has that energy. So then were you thinking, okay, like, how do I do that? Like, how do I make that happen?
I mean, I kind of knew, he was making me laugh as well, and he was making my parents laugh.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew, oh, he's a comedian. I didn't know how to become a comedian, but I'm like, that's what I want to do forever. Like, I want to do what he's doing right now.
So you literally are doing the thing you figured out you wanted to do when you were 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky. It's funny, if you see me like walking around my apartment feeling sorry for myself sometimes, like if something doesn't go well, because I can spiral into feeling miserable. I'm amazing at playing connect the dots.
Yeah.
Like things are going great, and I'll take one little shitty thing, and I can just kind of, I can ping pong it all the way down into the basement where I'm just depressed and I should throw myself off the Queensboro
Yeah.
Bridge. You know, but yeah, when you look at it like that, basically, like you're doing what you wanted to do when you were 12, stupid. Be happy.
Yeah.
Be grateful. So life is, you know, I'm very, very lucky. I've gotten almost everything that I've ever wanted that I've been willing to work for.
So with comedy, certainly looking at it from the outside, it looks like you've got networks. You know, you put in the time, you put in the work, but then you build a community around it. On the other hand, it seems like comedians tend to be very dark, very depressed people.
Yeah.
So that's a weird community to be in.
You connect with other comedians. Most of my friends are comedians.
But was that the case when you were a teenager too?
No. I mean, I was 15, 16, I was drinking and doing drugs, and that,
Got
you know,
it,
that
got
I was
it,
going
got
through
it,
that.
got it.
I was like a little emo douche before it was popular to be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, I was like, that was my, you know, like,
And you were
woe
listening
is
to Black
me.
Sabbath, and you're like,
Oh yeah,
listening
yeah,
to,
but
like,
I mean,
you're
I still
listening to
do. That
Kid.
had
Yeah,
nothing to do with me. That was actually the one thing I did right, was listen to Black Sabbath. But you know, then you get older and you outgrow all that stuff and you clean up. And I got sober when I was 18, so I think this is something I'm very lucky for. I don't have, that never messed with my adult life. And I started comedy when I was 21.
So you were talking about this idea of some people developing these skills. And to me, it just seems like alcohol is just such a central part of how people navigate the world, because you need to get, you know, to make an excuse for yourself a
Yeah.
little bit, just to kind of be open. But you just seem really, certainly your comedy is extremely, extremely open. And for a lot of people, you need something to get you to that place.
Yeah, I always found it was the best if you tell on yourself, because then they can't get you with it. And that was the stuff that made other people laugh, and it made other comedians laugh. Like the stuff I would tell, the truths about myself that I would tell that were uncomfortable or embarrassing or sexual or whatever they were, that kind of always made me feel like I have the right now to attack anything, because I'm starting at home. Like I'm exposing myself, and I'm attacking all my phoniness, because I have as much of it as anybody, my own weakness, my own perversion.
Did you ever go to Brazil and fuck a hooker without a rubber? I didn't think so, rookie. Have Jell-O. I'll go to the doctor.
So I never felt guilty making fun of other people's, because I figured I offered what I had first.
Yeah.
That's why I hate the press so much. Like they'll tell you all about Mel Gibson's private phone calls, but they won't play you any of theirs. I'm making fun of him, but I kind of tell you about mine first.
Yeah. So you say things that are shocking. You know, that's a central part of your comedy. How true is it? I mean, how, you know, to what extent is it kind of like, frankly, a little exaggerated? You know what I mean? To what extent is it kind of like your sexual perversions are not quite that perverse?
I've actually told less than is real. But you exaggerate sometimes in the emotional reaction. And the shocking part is funny. I guess some of it is considered it, but I never consider it shocking.
Yeah.
Like to me, it shouldn't be. It's like, and I mentioned the press again, like they literally show photos of dead bodies, and that's legit. But if you're a comic and you drop a C-bomb on stage, you're like, oh my God, he's shocking. It's like, I don't think there's anything that we do as stand-ups that's shocking. You know, I've watched beheading videos. You know, those are shocking, but just a dumb comics making remarks or whatever, I never think that that's surprising at all.
Let's talk more about the press, because this is something that you've talked about, you care about. I mean, on a certain level, you know, I mean, this is their job, right? I mean, sort of, you know, this is what we consume. We want to read about people we find interesting, and maybe we want to see them taken down a peg every now and again.
Sure.
And that's part of what comedians do too, right? The difference is that they're not funny. You know, when the press does it, but I mean, you know, that's part of this. You know, we set people up. We put them at the, you know, we put them on a pedestal, and then we just knock them down, and that seems to be a big part of what this celebrity journalism stuff you're talking about does, right?
If everyone was honest as what you just said, if everyone said it like you just said it, I'd be 100% with it, because that's honest. That is what it, you know, comedians make fun of things. We see things and we mock them, or we mock things around them, or we mock the reactions to them. But the press goes under the guise of, and they have content, they're allowed different content than most shows are, because they're considered the media. They're supposed to be unbiased. They're supposed to be just reporting what's happening. They're not supposed to have a narrative.
So we don't call them trolls or anything like that. We just kind of, I see what you're saying.
And that's what bothers me. And the press is even, they're just as bad as the trolls online. You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, I just can't picture.
It's the sanctimony that bothers you. It's the idea that they are here and they're able to judge us without saying a goddamn thing about kind of where they're coming from.
Right, and I guess in fairness to them, they have a 24-hour news cycle. to deal with and 24 hours of news to compete with, whereas Cronkite did not.
Yeah.
Dan Rather didn't. They had an hour or a half hour, and that was it. Vietnam is unwinnable. Good night. You know, Mary Tyler Moore comes on. You know, now it's, you know, headline news, 24 hours, this is 24 hours. So these guys have to find something to talk about. So I guess that's also, being in the media is probably difficult now, because how do you fill all those hours?
Okay, you're a young adult, and you kind of still have in the back of your head, you know, Richard Pryor. But then where did the work part of it come in? Because, you know, no one gets to the point where you are without the work. So what did that work look like of kind of getting better and, you know, kind of putting the time in?
The hardest part of it is when you fantasize about being something, whether it's a comedian or whatever it is, it's like a little secret place you go to. It's like a little secret dream you have for yourself. And the scary part is not failing, it's losing the ability to have that fantasy. Like for me, the ability just to dream, like someday I'll do that, someday I'll be that person. To lose that place to go to in my head was what was so scary. Because bombing I knew I could handle, and at that age I didn't know that was what scared me. I just kind of realized as I got older. Me and my buddy Larry, another sober friend, went to a comedy show in Spotswood, New Jersey, and there was an open mic there, and I don't know why I signed up. I don't know why I did. I never believed, I think it would impress this girl that I was dating, who we were getting ready to break up. So I think, oh, I still think I'm cool if I do this. And I talked to a comedian there named Lynn Vecchio. I've never seen her since. I don't know whatever happened to her. I always wanted to talk to her and thank her, because she talked to me for about a half hour about being a comedian and all this stuff, and she really answered a lot of my questions, and it was the only time I ever met her.
It's also, you know, being a female comedian in that era too, I mean, that's pretty interesting. I'll bet she was a pretty interesting person.
I don't remember, to be honest. I wouldn't even know her if she walked in the room.
Yeah.
Because 1990.
Yeah.
It's about March or February of 1990, so I only remember one thing she did in her act was something about the Wizard of Oz, and she was going, oh. She was doing something about the Munchkins. That's all I remember, other than the fact that she talked to me for a while and made me feel important enough to come back.
So what were the big moments in your career that you felt were big moments while they were happening?
Yeah, when I guess I was 9 months into it or 6 months into it, there was a guy named Bob Levy, who I'm still friends with to this day. He was like the local headliner at the time, who I really looked up to. And I admired him, and he was so funny. And I wanted to work with him. So Bobby was hosting a show in the big room at Rascals, which is where I did open mics. And it was my first time on the big stage, and Bob introduced me. And I bombed terribly. And I walked off early. I don't think I've walked off early since then. And I remember driving home that night.
Have you ever bombed without walking off early? Like you just
terribly, yeah.
Why is that? Is that masochism? Like, why do you just kind of keep at it?
Well, I mean, it's like any other day at work, you know. It's like if you're a carpenter and you smash your thumb with a hammer, you still got to go to work the next day.
Keep going, yeah.
So I remember driving home that night, and I was crying. I was on the Garden State Parkway. I'm like, I'm just not funny. I'm not going to do comedy anymore. And I called the owner of the club, and he's like, well, you got to do a little soul searching and see if this is for you. And I thought about that, and I think the next night I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go on again. I'm going to do it again. And I think that's when the first Desert Storm broke out. I believe I couldn't go on for a couple of days because the war happened. That was right around that time. But that to me was a huge moment that I realized in hindsight was a huge moment. The fact that I had that horrible experience, the humiliation, I didn't think could ever get that bad again. And I don't know if I've ever been so naked and humiliated since then. I've bombed even worse. But just the utter feeling of I'm terrible and I'm in the wrong profession. But the next night I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it again. That to me was a huge milestone. The fact that I got through that, because that's what scares everybody. That night is why everybody in the world doesn't do stand-up comedy, because they're afraid of that night. And I got through it. Meeting Andrew Dice Clay was a huge thing for me, because he liked me and he took me on the road, and he taught me about being in front of 3,000 and 4,000 people audiences that were aggressive, so I learned to be extremely aggressive on stage. He introduced me to Opie and Anthony, and Opie and Anthony really changed my career.
Tell me about that. I mean, what was it about you that drew them in? What was it about them that you respected and wanted to be around? Like, tell me about that connection with those guys.
They just liked me because when I would come in and be funny, I didn't do bits. They liked that I didn't do jokes. And I understood the tempo of the show, which was, I was fine letting Opie and Anthony be funny and just chiming in with one-liners. They liked the fact that I understood the cadence of the show pretty fast. And what I love about them is they've never asked me to not be who I am. Never. They've never said, hey, can you not talk about that? Or, hey, don't try to make that funny. Like, they've never, in all the years I've known them, asked me to not be myself. They've never asked me to not talk about my sexual experiences or who I am or what I like. Never. They've never asked me to censor myself. So I love that about those guys.
So you're that direct with yourself and with the people around you in every aspect of your life? I mean, is there any kind of context in which you're kind of like soft pedaling things and
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have social grace and things in my life that have to be handled delicately, and relationships and breakups, and believe me, when I'm in a relationship and I'm dirty texting with someone else, I'm not telling my girlfriend like, yeah, read this. I'm a sneak like every other guy who does it. So yeah, there's plenty of times where I soft pedal things, or I'm delicate, or I tiptoe, and sure.
But has the aggressive openness on stage, has that been good for you, do you think?
Yeah, Louis gave me a great compliment one time. He said to me, you're really good at explaining why you feel how you feel. It was after I said the Comedy Cellar. And I really liked that he said that, because I feel if you're explaining why you're saying something, it's another thing they can't get you with it. Like, especially in this day and age, with everything's got you. Everything is waiting for you to verbally trip so they can pounce on you. And then take it out of context, or even take it in context and not care that the context is being ignored. That's the problem today, is we know a context and just ignore it, because the idea of getting someone is more important than seeing something in context and going, oh, okay, there's nothing to see here.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's like hypocrisy is the worst possible thing somehow. It's like, we accept that we're going to disagree about these sort of whatever else, but we can get you for being a hypocrite. And it's like, it's very interesting, but I think you're right. I mean, that seems to be the thing in this moment in our culture that is considered the most horrible thing.
Well, it's embarrassing. Like, look at Jonah Hill's a perfect example. I know him very casually. We're not good friends, but he's not a homophobe at all. And he snaps at a paparazzi and he says, faggot. All right, that was a stupid thing to say. But the guy was legitimately hassling him. It was in his personal space. It was yelling personal stuff. And he says something stupid. But what we do is we vilify the guy who snaps at a guy who's legitimately harassing him. Like, no one goes after this vulture following him, trying to get a reaction, invading his space. Like, we don't see any problem with that, because for some reason, that guy represents us. That guy with the camera is in a way doing a service for us, because he's getting the reaction that we kind of all want.
It's so weird, because, it's almost as though you've set yourself up for this by making yourself a public person.
Right.
Then we kind of decide that anything goes. And it's funny the way that works. What I want to know about is this. So you often explore yourself, your inner life, your wants and needs and fears on stage. That's really at the heart of what you do. But now with Vice, you're doing the show, The Jim Norton Show, where you're interviewing other people. You're trying to get into their heads. Tell me about that.
I've been interviewing people on O&A for so many years. I like doing it. And sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's not. Like, sometimes you're just talking. But I think that, like, what I hate about television is that everything is a soundbite. Everything is a quick, blah, 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 great project, back in 2. And it's like, oh, fuck you. It's so boring. It's all the same. The sets are overdone. The crowd explodes with joy. It's just shit. It's like Dick Cavett, talk to people. Mike Douglas, talk to people. And I know we're in a different age right now. They didn't have to compete with the internet. Yeah. It's a much different time. They had 3 stupid stations. But I still enjoyed the conversations. Like when Dick Cavett was talking to Marlon Brando or Katharine Hepburn, it's like these were real people and they were talking like real people. So I kind of liked doing that, and that's what I wanted to do. That was the show I wanted to do, but being myself. I don't want to be, I'm not Charlie Rose. I can get into somebody's head a little bit, but again, I'm happy to talk about my own stuff too.
Are you naturally curious about other people? Have you always been that way?
Sure. I mean, to be a comic, to be a good comic, you have to be able to read people. You have to be interested in other people. Otherwise, you're just this dumb narcissist standing up there talking about things that nobody can connect with. So you kind of have to be. So for the first episode, we got Mike Tyson and Dana White, and it was a whole process to get them, but they wound up coming through for me. Like, really did me a huge favor. And they were amazing. I mean, the things Mike will reveal is really, like, he just does not seem to care what he says about, which is a great quality. We say we respect honesty. As a culture, I love honesty, but if somebody says something honest that we object to, all of a sudden we don't like honesty anymore. Mike just kind of says what's on his mind, and I really love that. So we, when we're talking, we'll talk about sex, and I confess I think he likes the fact that I'll talk to him about hookers too. Like, I'm not gonna go like, so what was that like, Mike? And I'll just be like, yeah, there was a time that he tells a story on my show about how he had a threesome. Like, him and a guy had sex with a girl, and both of those people are now dead with AIDS. And how you dodge bullets in life. And so I told a story about a hooker I picked up with my friend Bill, and Bill went first, and I couldn't get an erection, so I couldn't sleep with her, and Bill wound up dying of AIDS. No, I don't think she gave it to him. I think he had it. He was a drug addict.
My God.
And I don't think I would have gotten it in that moment.
Yeah.
But the point is, you don't realize the risk you put yourself at all the time when you're behaving like that. So I feel like to do an interview like that, it's much more interesting to me if two people are both understanding something than just one smug douche sitting there going, I see. Well, why did you do that, Michael? That's not the guy I am.
That's the guy I am, though.
No, but you're not asking annoying questions, though. You're asking very good questions. You're just chatting. You're not in that, I'm trying to nail you on something, which is what a lot of people do. They just want to get the information to get you on it. And there's a totally different tone to that.
Do you feel as though, and you mentioned on Opie and Anthony, you've been interviewing people for such a long time. Has that shaped how you think of yourself at all? That give and take of kind of being open to other people's experiences and trying to figure out what their motivations are. Do you think that's kind of helped you think through your own just stuff at all?
I mean, maybe it has just by the process of doing it, but you have to be, it's made me a better listener, because I find that when you're talking to people, you have to listen to them or you're not gonna know. Like, one of the scariest ones I ever did, it wasn't even Opie and Anthony, it was, I'm an Ozzy fanatic. I love Ozzy Osbourne. We've talked to him a bunch, but the record label asked me to interview Ozzy one time for an album called Scream, and they said, it's just gonna be you and Ozzy for an hour. And it was so terrifying to me, because there was no Opie and no Anthony to bounce off. That's the good thing about, the first time we interviewed Ozzy Osbourne, I was so petrified that I couldn't talk. And Anthony was so good that day. He just rapped with Ozzy, and Opie finally goes, what the fuck, you're not gonna talk to Ozzy? And I finally started chatting. But I was so scared I couldn't talk. That's back in 2005. So I was afraid that was gonna happen again. So I made 6 pages of notes. And then we started talking about something, and the fact that I was listening to him and then reacting to what he was actually saying instead of obsessing about my notes made it a great conversation, and it went very smoothly. But if I wasn't listening, that never would have gone well. So I guess that's what it teaches you, is how to truly listen to other people.
Do you think of yourself as having a mission? Obviously part of the comedy thing is that it's something you've always been good at, you love doing it, you learn from it. But do you think there's a kind of a message you want to get across to people at all?
No, I mean, in all honesty, when comedians start to lose things is when they do 2 things. When they think they're always right, 3 things. They think they're smarter than the audience, and when they think they're sexy. Nothing makes me want to fucking vomit faster than a comedian with an open vest. It's like, hey, shithead, don't think that you've been working out for a couple of years and now everybody wants to sleep with you and you have to be sexy. That's not what your job is. My job is not to be right all the time. It's to be as honest as I can be. And I bat, I think, 500 like every other dope in the country. I'm right half the time and I'm wrong half the time. My only thing is I try to be honest about why I feel a certain way. I was for the Iraq War, and I said it on Tough Crowd, and I said it. And then as years went on, I became against it. And I was like, I really wish we didn't do that. And then people will come out and they'll go well, you used to say you were for it. I'm like, yeah, I was. And then other things came out, and I changed my mind on it. I felt that way at one point, and now I don't. I felt like I was wrong to feel. So what? I was honest about how I felt at the moment. I don't claim to always be right. And if you don't think you're always right, I don't think you leave yourself open to a whole lot of attack.
What do you hope for the show? What would be the best case scenario for you? If you're doing it for a while, what would be the thing that would make you happiest about the new Jim Norton Show? I
want people to think it's funny, because I do a monologue and I do a sketch sometimes and maybe a piece to the audience. I want people just to think it's an interesting conversation. There will be some that's very funny, there's some really good laughs with Mike and Dana White, and Whitney Cummings was a great guest. And Freeway Rick she's tremendous, and she's very honest, and she talks a lot about her own self-esteem issues, and she's a hot girl, so to hear that, and she means it. She's not being mock humble. She really legitimately meant it. Yeah. And Freeway Rick was a great guest. I mean, Anyone who makes 900 million dealing cocaine, if you can't enjoy talking to him, what the fuck are you doing with a microphone? Like, I couldn't wait to talk to him. And the other episode, which is David Tell, we were gonna have Richard Linklater, the director, but he canceled the night before because of he couldn't leave LA. So Dave came on last minute. It was great. So I want people just to think it was an interesting and funny show. Some more serious than others, some completely ridiculous.
Is there a kind of a mountain you want to climb? Is there, because you've done so much, but is there a thing that you haven't done yet that you feel like you're working towards that would mean a lot to you?
Yeah, I want to have a show on the air. And I'm not just saying this because this is Vice. Vice is where I wanted to do it because I like the way those guys think. You know, they do really weird, different things. They go to crazy places. They didn't break my balls on content at all. They didn't go like, well, that's you shouldn't say. They just wanted the show to come out good. And you know, you don't get that kind of creative freedom in a lot of places. So that's pretty much, you know, all that. I would say there's a mountain. I just want to have the show work and last for a while. I mean, I really love doing it. I mean, it was fun to do. Editing's a pain in the ass. But it's like, you know, you trial and error. You find out what works, what doesn't work. Like, that camera angle sucks, so let's go with this. And, you know, it's like a learning process.
Where can our viewers find you? You know, if they want to, you know, see you perform live, or if they want to, you know, see you on screen. I mean, what are the best ways to do it?
Jim Norton on Twitter, and then hopefully on Vice. You know, the Twitter's the best one. Facebook I don't use much. I just enough already with the Facebook request to fucking play Candy Crush. It's really getting irritating. Facebook is eventually going to die because of that. People are going to get so sick of being pestered with Candy Crush, and stop asking me to connect on LinkedIn. No, I'm not interested. Enough already. So-and-so invited you to LinkedIn. Drop dead.
I think this means you're not going to accept my LinkedIn request.
Yours I probably would accept, just so you don't edit this and make me look bad. That's only my own wormness.
Well, Jim, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me, man. I'm very glad to do it.